All right, I think we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Million or the Moon live stream. It's been a while since we've kind of had you on the show, but I'm super excited to have you back on, Jesse, because
Mhm.
it seems to
Thank you.
me like from the last time I've had you on, there's been a lot of changes, not only just kind of greater macro crypto space, but a lot going on with Power City as well. Some super interesting dApps being built out that I think the greater kind of Pulse chain community hasn't really digested to the fullest extent the kind of exciting stuff that's going on with Power City. There's been some huge news recently, so I'm very excited to have you
Uh-huh.
back on. So, Jesse, how you been, man?
Great, great.
Yeah,
And this delay with Pulse Chain has actually been really helpful to build out the things that people are going to need on Pulse Chain for it to be wildly successful and have the coolest functions and features on it, right? So we're
right.
not really complaining about any sort of delays.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I've been complaining a little bit on Twitter, but that's just me venting a little bit. I understand the pros of waiting for sure. And I tweeted this out somewhat recently, and I want to know if Jesse, if, to what extent you agree with the sentiment. But I'm not aware of any other chain that has this many great ideas, great teams building up this many DApps this early in its development. I mean, Cardano just got a DEX after years of being out. What was it, last August, something like that?
Mhm.
Years
Right.
after it's been out.
Sunday swap.
Sunday
Yeah,
swap,
you're
right?
right. It
And
took
we have
forever for
all
that stuff
this
to come
early.
about.
Yeah, yeah. So it's incredible to see how much development is being had on Pulse Chain this early on, which is I mean, again, a testament to kind of the community and to the potential opportunity here in not just Pulse Chain, but things being built on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
People, I think outside of the pulse chain community, uh, I don't think people realize the value, how undervalued pulse chain actually is. Right. To be able to launch a chain with over 200 um, different projects, right? Some of them meme coins, some of them, a lot of these things will fail, but you actually have a lot of blue chip type stuff that is launching on the chain. Lending protocols, stablecoin protocols, dex aggregate, we have a dex aggregator bridge, um like things that are essential. Like when you look at a chain and you're like, wow, that's a chain I want to check out, right? Immediately you think, okay, what does Ethereum have? And you have, you know, the Aves and the Liquidities and the Maker and Curve and Convex, and you have 1inch, and you have all these big blue chip things that actually make the chain survive. The rest is all extra stuff, speculated, speculation plays. But those things literally survive market after market after market because without them, you wouldn't have a successful chain.
Right.
And Pulse Chain has a lot of those things early on. And, Power City is proud to be bringing, a few of those big blue chip type items to the chain.
Absolutely. Now, there's been some recent changes with Pulse Chain from going from a Binance Smart Chain fork to an ETH point 2 fork, maybe some changes in transactions per second. Has any of that affected how Power City plans on being implemented, rolled out? Has that affected anything whatsoever?
So the underlying like code itself is pretty much the same. Now from a use case, well, we may have actually picked up some additional eyes from the community of, oh, what can we do with our pulse now? So let me give you an example. Delegated proof of stake, a lot of the community was excited that they would be able to stake their pulse and then earn more pulse from the fees, that the network was generating, right? That system went away. It's gone. Right. So now what can people do with their pulse? Well, if you'd like to earn with your pulse, there's a couple ways to do it, right? You can use the um, amplifier front end that works on top of it's a liquid loans front end. You can collateralize your pulse and you can put some of that value to work for you, right? Or you can also, in addition, um, go ahead and we have a swap function that allows you to obtain Watt token, stake that for fees and Pulse from everything that we're building, at an ever increasing share rate, by the way. So that's called our core. So you can actually put that Pulse to work for you. And the way that swap function works is actually pretty intuitive. It's like a protocol owned liquidity pool that as the value is placed in, those Pulse coins are actually held on the other side of the pool. They don't actually, there's no LP guy that can just drain it out, where you have like this weird ever increasing market cap that may be disproportional to the, value that's in circulation, right? So the way the Watt token functions, it's actually very, very much tied to the price of Pulse because of how it retains the uh, the underlying thing that was swapped for it. And it can still move on its own as well, but it's very, very much tied to it. And it allows you to put your value to work for you and earn more Pulse, right? So you can still, it's a lot. It feels a lot like, okay, I'm going to stake this and I'm going to earn more Pulse. Right?
That was
And
one
you
of the
can do
things
the
that
same
drew me
thing
to
using the
Power
liquid
Innovation.
loans contracts, using the liquid loans contracts with, with the amplifier.
Right. And
which
look,
has its own,
no, go ahead, finish your thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool things about liquidity contracts. There's there's fees that flow back to stakers and such. Um, we at Power City believe in this motto, revenue over inflation. Right. So passive income, if you have something and you can stake it for fees from network usage, then the value of what you're earning is it's literally directly tied to the network of users. It's not tied to some arbitrary inflation or some weird, um, taxonomics that are just shuffling value back and forth for no reason. The value is literally coming from people using a tool or a service that's essential to the underlying chain, right? So let me give an example of that. We have a bridge that'll bridge across to 31 different blockchains. Um, it also serves as a DEX aggregator. So you can use its functions on the same chain if you want, but you could be on one chain and you can have a token that you'd like to swap and you want to end up with a token on another chain. You click a button, you wait, you select the route that you'd like it to take, you select the best rate that you'd like, and then bam, you end up with a token on the chain you're trying to go to, the token that you wanted, right? It's a little bit different than some other bridges because it uses some DEX aggregation to make this work and do the swaps around. But that's certainly a service that people want to use because of the safety and how it functions, because of the selection of tokens that you can start with and end with, right? So instead of maybe a different type of bridge where there's only 5 things to choose from, right? You can select, thousands of things that you to start with, and maybe, hundreds or even thousands of things that you might want to end with at the end of the routing, right?
That's super
So
interesting. Yeah.
the user experience is much, much better. The safety of doing it this way is much, much better. And that would only be possible with a partnership that we have with Multichain, who's formerly known as AnySwap. And they're the best in the industry, right? So we partnered with them to bring them to Pulse Chain and essentially be their provider, right? Launch the front end that allows people to interact with their functionality, right? That's absolutely huge, and people really need to realize the implications of that. You now have 30 other blockchains that people can easily select any number of coins that they have and instantly come into Pulse Chain. Okay, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. And there's fees from that. But the fees, instead of the team just raking them all in, like for ourselves, there's a large percentage of fees that actually flow to our own community of believers.
Are those fees in Pulse chain? Or are
Right.
those fees in the other tokens? What are those fees in?
Those fees are paid in Pulse, right? So Watt stakers collect fees in Pulse. That's not to say in the future that other tokens can't also be fed to stakers of Watt, but initially fees flow to Watt stakers, and those fees are in Pulse, right? The thing that people really like, right? Or that they would like. That's a big deal. And our thing interacts with PulseX, right? So there's on chain, there's like you've got PulseX pool contracts. So if you're using our thing as a DEX aggregator, you're still interacting directly with PulseX. However, if there happens to be any pools that have a better rate outside of PulseX pools, let's say Uniswap starts to stock itself back up, which I actually think it might, because there's some weird arbitrage stuff that has to happen. And I actually think Uniswap pools might stock up a little bit, right? Let's say you find some other pools. Dex Tools has their own pools. There's all sorts of pools on a chain, liquidity pools. Our thing will interact and display to you the best rate that you can get for your swap. Now, oftentimes, maybe because of that fixer bot Richard will use, oftentimes that might be directly with the PulseX pools. But if there happens to be better rates, it'll display that to you and you can select to choose that route instead. That's a huge deal. So essentially, we're almost like a front end provider for PulseX, but a DEX aggregator, a 1-inch sort of thing that's also multi-chain. People don't realize how big of a deal this is.
Whoa,
People
hold
are
on.
not paying it. People are not
That's
paying
huge.
attention enough
You're
because
saying
this
you're
is a big
creating
deal.
a multi-chain DEX aggregator for Pulse chain similar to
Exactly.
1inch. That's huge.
Well, it's really better than 1-inch because it does go multi-chain.
Interesting. And it goes multi-chain through the same mechanism as the bridge.
Yes.
Interesting.
All
And
right.
so,
So that's just
yeah.
one tool. Listen,
Mhm.
that's just one tool. Okay. That's just one single tool that has fees that flow to the Watt stakers. Right. So then you think, okay, what else? And look, that was just done through a series of partnerships, some discussions, some partnerships, and these tools were already in place elsewhere. And we're like, okay, let's bring you to Pulse Chain. What's required to do that, right? So we secured the partnerships to make that possible. So we didn't have to build this from the ground up, but we did have to do a lot of legwork and a lot of discussions, some back and forth to make this possible, to bring a blue chip service, which is AnySwap, now known as multi-chain, to Pulse Chain, right? So that hard work is done. And now Pulse Chain has some really cool on and off, not really on and off ramp. When you use that word, people think like exchange, but on and off ramp bridge to other blockchains, right?
Right. Yeah.
All right. So that's okay. That piece, cool. All right. Set that aside for a second. We also saw the need because we really, really love liquid loans and what it's going to do for the ecosystem. Of course, collateralize your pulse. You don't have to sell it. You can lend against it. It kind of works like a stop loss if you do it right. Fully manageable, debt position and collateral position. You've got the stability pool where participants earn the reward token that can be staked for the fees, right? That's all really, really beautiful. And it applies to the Pulse coin. And we wanted a way, because there's some cool functions inside of there where you can stake and you can earn both Pulse and USDL, but you can also stability provide and you can earn some Pulse and you can earn some loan tokens. And if you happen to be on the lending part of it, if you've taken a loan, you have a position that you might want to manage, at a certain level, at a certain collateral health. Okay. We said, well, wait a minute. How can we create something that you just predefine the parameters and it auto compounds everything in the directions you want it to go. Right. So our liquid loans front end, our amplifier that's a liquid loans front end, you can use it in its basic form. It interacts directly with liquid loans contracts, or you can turn on some additional functionality, which allows your rewards to turn into other rewards. So let's say you prefer to just stack USDL stacking, right? If you're earning Pulse, if you're earning, the reward token, the system will just auto swap those things straight into more USDL and just keep
Mm.
stacking up your USDL position. Maybe you prefer the other thing. So it'll just keep auto stacking your loan tokens. Maybe you want to keep your collateral health at a certain level. Maybe every time the price goes up, you do want it to mint you additional USDL and then place those straight into the stability pool. You literally tell it in a very simple fashion. Long Vacation made a video about this. It's you can scroll through our Twitter or on our YouTube, and you can see this video on how all this functions. And it's actually really, really simple. It nothing in crypto is just a set and forget. But you don't have to hover over your computer 10 times a day, right? So it's actually really, really cool. During that, we realized that there was a strong desire from the PulseX community, which is big, by the way. It's huge. There's like
Technically
3 times
bigger than
the
Pulse
user
Chain.
base,
Right.
and the sacrifice for PulseX was nearly just over 2 times that what it was for Pulse. And then you look at, okay, what's going on with PulseX? Okay, all these single-sided staking pools and the buy and burn functionality and the pools that are necessary for that. And you start to realize, wow, this thing is for sure, at least you would hope, going to perform, similar to Cake Token, but it actually has way more functionality and users. And you look at Uniswap and you're like, well, that actually performed well. And that's a duct tape on governance token. And then you got the community yelling at you that they want the same ability for PulseX token as they do for Pulse. And it was like a no-brainer to say, okay, give people the option to play in a similar playground with a different piece of collateral. And by the way, there's other playgrounds you can go to. There's fiat, right, which is an Aave fork. There's all the different single-sided staking pools that people have. I do think you'll see even other plays that people can do with their Pulse coins. I mentioned that no longer delegated proof of stake. Now, just imagine for a second, maybe a guy like Alex is smart enough to build a giant warehouse of validators and then build some smart contracts where people can put some Pulse in and earn a share of all of the fees that are flowing in, right? So
Right.
you could have these mimicked things that kind of these things that kind of mimic delegated proof of stake, right? That are built on top of the new ETH 2.0 consensus model. You're going to see all sorts of things. Now, what people, right away, people think that having all of this stuff going on in the chain is actually like, well, wouldn't it be better if we had none of that and we only had one place to take our PulseX? No, that's
Competition
incorrect.
is good. Competition is healthy.
But you can't even necessarily call it competition because they all kind of help each other, right?
That's
So
right.
check this
Yeah.
out. What if none of this existed and it was an empty chain without all these tools? Okay, so the value probably wouldn't go up as much because there's not cool things for people to play with. So you got to consider that. But what if the only place that you could do something with is to go to one single-sided staking pool, and that's where 150,000 people all piled in and all diluted each other? You would have this you would have this like really good APY, and a day later it would be garbage. The incentive to hold the token would no longer exist. People would not only exit the pool, but then they would also dump the token until the next pool crew started. And then it would be everybody piling into that one. And it would just be repeating over and over and over. But
And
when
also
you have
diversifying smart contract risk as well with the different protocols.
um sure, there's smart contract risk in every single smart contract on any blockchain that ever existed. You look at what it does, the auditors look at what it does, you know, if there's no keys to drain the funds out of there, if there's no weird Oracle failure points, where people can manipulate the price against what the actual market price is, like fake out a price to try and take advantage of a protocol. As long as those things don't exist, there's no problem, right? But that applies to every smart contract ever. But you don't really want everybody to be in the same pool all at the same time. That's not healthy. What's healthy is having multiple places for people to play, and it actually increases the APY in the other pools.
Yeah, no,
Would you rather
absolutely. Yeah.
like literally, if you didn't have an alternative choice for a token that you can stake? Okay, let's look at the Hex ecosystem. Same thing is happening. You have these alternative options to do things with your Hex now, with Hedron and Icosa and all these things. And the more and more options there are to do something with those tokens, it actually ends up helping the underlying thing itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
More
is no
more
different.
stakers,
This is
yeah.
no different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting stuff, man. And I don't think people realize what's really going on here with Power City. Because I know you guys made a major announcement recently, and we're kind of touching on it, but let's really delve into the weeds here. A couple days ago, was it a couple days ago? I feel like it was a couple days ago. You guys made the announcement that you'll be creating a liquidity fork for PulseX. I know we've been kind of touching on
Right.
it, but let's really
Right.
delve into that here because this is really, really big news. Let's delve into the
Right.
nuances. How different is this from liquid loans? Is it kind of same functionality in terms of the staking pools, APRs, tokenomics? Let's delve into all that. How do you want to begin here?
All right. So it's called Earn Protocol.
Earn protocol. Okay.
Earn, right? And the reward token is called the Earn token. The stablecoin is called the PulseX dollar coin, PXDC. Now, Earn Protocol, there's actually an acronym that goes along with that. Enhanced Autonomous Rewards Network,
Oh, very awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's some autonomy inside there where when you're earning the fees just automatically get emitted to the stability depositors, right? And if you're staking, the fees from people taking loans or doing redemptions autonomously get fed to those stakers, right? So it literally is like this autonomous rewards system, right? So that's how we came up with that. And Earn is kind of a cool name, right? You
Yeah,
want some Earn token?
absolutely.
What are you going to use it for? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's called the Earn token. You probably do something with it, to earn stuff,
Did you
right?
guys have a Twitter profile for Earn yet? I can't seem to find it.
Everything we have is straight on our at Power City IO Twitter,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
Now, the functionality is the same as Liquidity, and subsequently the same as any fork to include, liquid loans. You've got the underlying collateral, in this case is PulseX, and you can place that up as collateral and mint some stable coins. You have a minimum collateral health that's required, and that's 110%. You can go as high as you want. You can put in 1,000,000, percent collateral and just mint yourself the smallest size loan, 2,000 PulseX dollar coin if you want, and have a super duper safe collateral health. Or you can, be a degen if you prefer, And you can say, well, I just want to put in, you know, $2,201 worth of, PulseX and make myself a $2,000 loan. You wouldn't necessarily want to do that. There are cases where people will do that.
Yeah,
And
I'm
there
wondering
are
if there's potential
specific
tax implications to that, right? Like if you
to being liquidated. Look, a liquidation is a sale.
Oh,
And,
okay.
in most cases, it's you have disposed of your original asset. It's gone, right? So in most places, right?
Sure,
If you
sure.
even live in a place that taxes matter, right? So like there's a lot of places that people don't even pay taxes. Um, so the collateral health is fully manageable. You can top up your collateral, you can withdraw excess collateral, you can mint additional stable coins, you can pay stable coins back. If you choose to have the lowest collateral health, down at 110%, if the value of the collateral falls under 110%, you're going to lose your collateral. But even in that case, it's really not that big of a deal. You already have all those stable coins up front. You took a little 10% hit because you allowed that to happen, but it's not the end of the world. It's not like a liquidation, like you lose all your money and you're broke and homeless. The value of what you put in at that point, you know, you almost have every bit of that, and it's in stable coins. Now, and there's zero interest, there's zero repayment terms. You just got to keep more value in there than what you're minting or what you've minted. So you've got this mechanism where you can lend, right? So we just kind of went through that. Now you have, what happens if you pay back a loan? What happens if you say, I want to pay down some of my debt? You don't have to if you don't want to, because if the value of your collateral just keeps going up, you might not even want to, because now you're just super over collateralized. Um, let's say you put in $15,000 worth of PulseX or something, and you took a $2,000 loan, but then PulseX does a, 10x, and now you have $150,000 worth of PulseX sitting in there backing $2,000 worth of stablecoin, right?
Right,
Like, are you in a real big hurry to go pay back that $2,000? Probably not.
right.
You might be in a hurry to go mint more of them, or you might be in a hurry to go and withdraw some of that extra PulseX. Really, the only purpose to do that would be to go dump it on yourself, though, and that harms the price, right? So even then, why would you want to do that, right? You might have reasons for swapping it and stuff, but you could just mint additional stable coins and go swap that instead, and then the price of PulseX stays up.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, what's one example of a non-risky way to potentially use this? And I could say one now that you guys are bringing this earn protocol specifically with Pulse X lending, I could imagine someone could potentially take out a highly collateralized loan on liquid loans and get the PLSD. Is that correct? The stablecoin,
USDL.
USDL, and then come
Mhm.
over to earn, do the same thing with Pulse X and get the PXD. Is that correct?
Well, sure, they could. So check this
No,
out.
but my point is then you could take that and become a liquidity provider, and that way, if you get liquidated, just take out your LP position on the stable coin and use that to buy back your original your original position. And because you're providing liquidity on a stable coin, the impermanent loss doesn't really matter because it's all in stables.
Right.
And so
Right.
yeah, it's that's
As long as they're
potentially
both, the underlying, as long as the underlying collaterals there, right? So if you had tried that with like Luna, like
right.
it would have sucked
Would
a lot, right?
right? Yeah,
But they had this ridiculous inflation mechanism where it's like, oh, we don't have enough value in our backing our coins, mint more of them. And it's like, well, you mint more of them and it just makes the value of them go down. And it just went into this ridiculous, just endless minting, and it just it went to zero, right? Now this
yeah,
this is very different. This is very similar to Maker and Dai, actually, with just a couple different tweaks. And those
right.
tweaks are, there's no governance, right? So you can't have Circle come in and like own the majority of the vote. And there's institutional risk with something like that. They did do that with DAI.
Mm.
All right. And that's why you might hear some buzz in the community that DAI is no longer really centralized, because the governance votes are all in the control of Circle.
And so
Right. So
this is a very big deal, because for essentially for this protocol to function, you want the ability to have censorship resistance. And you're saying that we have
correct.
that here. There's no governance.
No governance. You can't change it. You can't change the code. What you see
Yeah,
is what you get.
that's super important.
The other flaw with the Maker protocol was the way they handle liquidations is not instant. So let's say so in Maker you have these vaults. People have to put up collateral. Let's say they put up collateral in ETH and they mint some DAI. Let's say one of those vaults, the price of ETH goes down, and one of those vaults is real low down by the liquidation point, and then it gets liquidated. What happens is that ETH goes up for auction, and people can buy it. People can bid on it to purchase it. But that process takes 6 hours for the auction to complete.
Mm.
The risk is there in Maker. First off, there's like a 30% buffer. The guy who was liquidated loses 30% overhead during the liquidation. He loses more value than he needs to. But if ETH happened to fall by 30% over the next 30 hours, the system, and if there was a number of vaults that were liquidated during that time, the system could actually go into a fractional reserve status and not have the full backing for the DAI that's in existence. Okay, because there's this window of 6 hours. What happens if ETH continues to fall in
Right,
value,
right.
significantly during those 6 hours?
Mm.
That's and by the way, when a liquidation gets bid on and then one guy collects that ETH, he's pretty much incentivized, because he got a good deal on that ETH, to go dump it on the market immediately at a profit. Right? So he races off to Uniswap and dumps it. Okay? It's a really poor mechanism that, I think it would be hard for DAI to cascade, because they have a big 30% buffer in there. But if something happened where ETH did take a 30% dump in a day or 40% dump in a day, you could have a really scary situation with DAI, where you have these guys who either refuse to bid on the ETH because it keeps going down. So now your DAI becomes under collateralized, and then everyone races to the door to sell out of it first. Or you've got just big whales who are collecting all this ETH and just dumping the price of it further, because they're getting it at a major discount from these liquidation auctions. It's like, I hate the mechanism of Maker because of these two things that I'm hesitant to call them fatal flaws, but they're severe flaws.
Right.
Okay. Now, what Liquidity did is they literally recognized these flaws. And they said, let's do away with any governance at all and make it completely immutable and unchangeable. And let's have a process that, if there happens to be a liquidation, it's settled, the debt is cleared instantly. No 6-hour window. It needs to clear instantly. So, and it's very simple. It's super simple how it works. So, if you wanted to pay back a loan, some debt that you had, you just bring back your LUSD and you put it back in. The LUSD burns itself back out of existence and unlocks the equivalent portion of collateral that was backing it. Anything up and over that was always yours anyway, right? Because the system just locks enough backing the stable coins that you've minted, right? So when you bring those stable coins back, it's a reverse of that. You minted them into existence. If you pay them back, they burn themselves back out of existence and unlock the thing that was back in it. It's really simple. Now, if there happens to be a liquidation, the same exact thing is happening, you have a stability pool that has participants, thousands of participants in a pool that have stable coins in there that pay back the loan instead, and it happens instantly, right? So their stable coins burn just as if they're paying back the debt, and the unlocked part of that ETH then just gets spread across all those stability depositors. So it happens instantly, and instead of one guy, because there's no bid function, there's not one guy that's collecting all the liquidated ETH. A giant market of people all collect just a little bit of it. So instead of them all racing to the door to sell their 10 cents of profit or their dollar worth of profit, maybe it was a liquidation of $50,000 worth of the collateral, right? It's not all going to one guy. It's getting spread across thousands of people. So they're all up a little bit, but are you really going to race to the door and just dump your 50 cents worth of profit, and then everybody else is going to do that too and further harm the price? No. So it's got this built-in mechanism of the stability pool that absorbs across everybody else. They all gain. Yeah, they're all up in the event of a liquidation, but they're also not incentivized to all race to the door and attempt to cascade the price or anything. This whole mechanism also is like an anti-whale manipulation mechanism too, right? So are you going to go and dump the price and hold it down for 30 minutes and wreck all your bags, give up all your PulseX that you're dumping and dumping and dumping to try and bring the price of PulseX down, just so that a couple vaults get liquidated and get spread to everybody else, and then you don't have anything to show for it? No, it doesn't make any sense. Even if you're one participant in the stability pool, even if you're the biggest guy there, the most you can ever gain from a liquidation is 10% what you've already put in the stability pool. So are you going to go dump 50, 60, 70% of your value over in PulseX just to pick up 10% of value, even if you're the only stability depositor? No, it's ridiculous. It's stupid. So it's literally this anti-manipulation mechanism built directly inside of it, and you don't see that the same way with the Maker protocol.
It's funny how in such a volatile market, there's such glaring, potential risks that manifest through volatility. So it's kind of funny how that exists. Just let me ask you: is there any stablecoin on Ethereum that you think might have some value on the Pulse chain? Maybe the
It's
liquidity
impossible.
stablecoin. Yeah, you don't
No,
think so?
it's impossible. Nope,
Why
it's
so?
absolutely impossible. So check this out. And just to wrap up our previous discussion, by being a stability depositor, you're earning the reward token that you can stake for all the fees whenever people take a loan or there's a redemption. And redemptions are actually really cool. Every single and this will caveat into your question actually. Every single stablecoin is fully backed, fully redeemable for $1 worth of its underlying collateral. So at any time you can take, the PulseX dollar coin. It can be redeemed for $1 worth of PulseX directly inside the protocol. You don't even need to go off the PulseX if you don't want to. You might want to, but you can also redeem it inside the protocol. And the same with the USDL. 100% fully backed and redeemable by PLS right inside the protocol, whether it's through Liquid Loans front end or our front end, doesn't matter. Click a button, redeem it for $1 for the Pulse.
Okay.
Okay. Most stable coins that are worth anything, right? So we'll talk RAI, DAI, USDC. USDC is redeemable for $1 worth of fiat dollars, right? DAI is redeemable for $1 worth of ETH. LUSD is redeemable for $1 worth of ETH. Like you have to have this redeemability back for $1 worth of something,
For it to have
or
any value.
right, or an actual dollar, right? So what happens if you just photocopy a blockchain and now you have the same ticker symbols, and one of those ticker symbols is USDC, It's no longer redeemable. That photocopy, that copy you just made out of thin air, is not redeemable. You
Now,
can't send a PRC20 USDC to Coinbase and ever in a million years think that they're going to give you $1 back for it.
no, it's true. But
They
Rich,
can't.
I've heard Richard make the point that perhaps there's some case where there could be some value retained through some kind of fractional backing. Do you buy that argument at all? Maybe his thinking on that has changed, but I remember during the
Not with
early days of this.
stablecoins.
Yeah,
Not with stablecoins. Because literally the thing that keeps them at $1 is the fact that they have a redemption mechanism.
Do you
So
think?
let me give you an example of what a a redemption looks like.
Sure.
So you've got liquidity pools on Uniswap, and the value of everything is of a stable coin is kind of in balance. It's in a perfect balance at the start. But let's say somebody comes and they dump a bunch of USDC. They dump a few $100,000 worth of USDC. The ratio changes in that pool, and the value of the USDC in that pool now goes down. Right? Like, let's say it was in a DAI pool, USDC paired to DAI. If somebody just comes and dumps a bunch of USDC and they extract some DAI, the ratios are now offset.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think it's
So-
yeah? Go ahead, please.
So you actually see stable coins do this on the charts. They literally flop around.
Yeah.
And that's because people are simply buying and selling and buying and selling. But when somebody dumps a lot, and you see this little wick where like USDC goes down to, 95 cents or something. Of course, that's a buying opportunity. But the only thing that keeps it a buying opportunity is because with reasonable assurances that Coinbase will give you $1 for that thing. So you can buy it for 95 cents and you can turn around and you can make 5% on it. Okay. The same rules apply in Maker with DAI. If the price of DAI falls a little bit, people literally buy it because they know that Maker protocol will spit out $1 worth of ETH for them if they want it. Okay. So people either buy it because they just know, they're getting a good deal and they just need a DAI anyway. So they just hold it, or people buy it and they instantly redeem it. And that's the act. That arbitrage event right there is what brings a stablecoin back to the proper peg, because there's a redemption mechanism.
Do you think it's
With Pulse Chain, that redemption mechanism is completely broken with DAI and LUSD and USDC and everything else. So if you see cheap USDC, if it goes down to 50 cents, are you going to buy it knowing that there's no other way that you can redeem it? And the only reason you're buying it is because there's other fools after you that might buy it. Right?
Right. Yeah.
No.
No.
Probably not, right?
So especially when you have
these things go to zero immediately after forks.
Interesting. Yeah. The only way I can imagine this potentially not going to zero, and I wonder what you think about this, is and again, this is kind of wildly speculative, is what if Richard happens to back PUSDC with sacked USDC? Do you think that's even reasonable to assume that would happen? And if that did, would that function? Would that have longevity?
Think about this. What if you were holding a photocopied non-redeemable stablecoin? Would you bridge in fully backed and redeemable stablecoin and pair it to the 100% fractionally reserved stablecoin, and then give the entire blockchain who's holding those the ability to just dump their bags on your head and take away your valuable thing from you?
Probably not, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. I don't even believe this myself, but I'm trying to think, what if Richard created some insane API or APR rate in terms of the incentive token for providing liquidity on some worthless, copied over coin? I'm just, for the sake of devil's advocate here, could you imagine that potential? Is it even reasonable to assume that that could potentially be a real world thing that might happen with Pulse Chain?
I think that's completely unreasonable. I
Mm,
think what you might see is you might see, you know, some things bridged in. But guess what? That's fine. Those are fully backed and redeemable. You just have to go through the bridge first.
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense completely. Exactly. And if you have liquid loans and earn protocol creating these fully backed stable coins, it doesn't make sense to mess around with these non-backed stable coins where there's only like insane sell pressure. And the only case where there wouldn't be is if there's some theoretical whale comes in with some insane APY that's probably unsustainable.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is super interesting stuff. Now, I don't want to leave the earn token stuff completely because I did want to ask you about the tokenomics of that token. Is it
Mhm.
is it the same as liquid loans? Are there any differences? Can you explain the tokenomics of the earn
Yeah.
token?
So super similar, right? So you've got this reward pool or you've got the stability pool, and these tokens emit out to stability depositors at an ever decreasing rate, right? So that incentivizes people to jump into the stability providing early and stock up that pool. And anybody who would like to obtain those things, well, there's really like early on, there's only two ways to do it. You either really have to, um, like our community, maybe align your political beliefs with our community, and perhaps, there's something there, or you can jump into the stability pool early on and you can earn the earn token by being a stability depositor, or you just got to buy it on the open market. Now, early on, like these things literally emit at an ever decreasing rate. And what you tend to see, if the underlying collateral value goes up, people's loans get bigger and bigger over time as well. I kind of explained that earlier, right? You've got
Yeah.
a guy who puts in collateral, he mints himself a loan. But if his collateral value goes way up, he just mints more loan. That means more fees are flowing to the stakers, which means it's more desirable for people to, obtain the token that earns them when they stake it, they earn the fees. So if PulseX does like a big giant run up and the fees are just doing a bigger and bigger run up with it, because just the volume of the lending and redemptions, um, it becomes really, really enticing to be an early person into the staking pool. How do you become an early person? Well, you have to be an early believer in the protocol, or you got to go and earn these things out of the stability pool at an ever decreasing rate.
So it's inflationary, but the inflation
It's
decreases
a
over
fixed
time.
supply from the beginning, but
It's
they
like a
get
supply.
released out through an emission, right? So
I see.
it
Okay.
earlier today I kind of explained to somebody like how, okay, it's eerily similar to a T-share, really, right? Where a T-share is harder to obtain. Maybe it's more expensive in hex terms to grab a T-share. So essentially, uh, you have less and less ability to obtain the share in the pool.
Did you guys fork the T-shirt system?
No, Liquidity kind of did it.
Okay.
Liquidity kind of did it, but they
Yeah.
did it with this reward token
Mm.
that becomes harder and harder to obtain, essentially giving you, you want to be early into this staking pool, right? It's eerily similar, and it has some differences in that if the underlying collateral goes up in value, people's loans are getting bigger, and then that you start to see people pile in more and more and more, even during later times, which could drive the price up, right? Nobody knows what the price of any of this stuff is going to be. If you look at Dune Analytics, they've got a ton of data about the Liquidity protocol. Um, the token doesn't look that good, but when you take the first 3 months out and then you realize what actually happened in the first 3 months, it's really not that bad. They had first off, they had no marketing. They had um, like barely any participants,
I didn't
early
even hear
on.
about them until you guys. Until
right?
you did their marketing for them.
And then they launched at the top of ETH,
Mm.
okay, and then they had like these VCs, and then with the lack of participants, it's like, oh well, what are these people going to do? What are these early people going to do with their tokens? Where's all the market participants? So instead of just parking those into the staking pool for a yield that was non-existent early on because barely anyone was using the protocol, they just dumped the tokens instead. But then people learned about the protocol and they started to pile in. It's got a $275 million, 275 million stable coins minted now. At one point, I think it was up over maybe $1 billion. Those naturally will, like, less stable. People pay back their loans in bear markets, right? So the stablecoin supply kind of contracts during the bear markets, and then it inflates back out as people mint more of them in the bull markets. So that's perfectly understandable. I think what you'll see is next bull market, uh, people will be minting a lot of LUSD with all the problems that are happening with institutions, right? With FTX, with some really Ponzonomic sort of things like Luna, with some really bad stuff that's happened in crypto over the years. People are, focusing on, okay, what's trustless, immutable, unchangeable, no counterparty, how can we eliminate the middlemen, etc. And
I don't.
people are literally starting to gravitate towards liquidity protocol. It's up, the supply is up 30% or so over the last what did I read? Like in like 30 days, people are literally flocking to it because they
I
know
think
it
that the
meets all the
smart
core
money
principles.
is. I think the
Yeah.
smart money is. I don't think retail is. I don't think retail has caught on to the idea of, hey, let's not put our money in these centralized things. I don't think that message is really caught on as much. I don't think.
Well, maybe retail will never catch on, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because look, retail likes to be involved in the things that with institutional control, or not retail. Retail is involved right now. You don't see major institutions playing with LUSD yet. You do see retail playing with LUSD.
Smart retail though.
Smart retail.
Yeah,
Institutions would rather have something that they have full control of so
that's right.
that they can take all the money away from the retail, right? So now you're talking about things like Tether and USDC, where they earn all the fees. By the way, when you interact with USDC, when it's minted into existence because you brought fiat in, or you do a redemption back to Coinbase, and they end up burning and minting that stuff in the background. And there are fees on these platforms like Coinbase. Do you get those? No. They make money off of you because they're the institution. In Liquidity, or in liquid loans, or in the Earn protocol, we as a community are a complete banking entity all to ourselves. There's no institution that's earning money off of us. The market participants who choose to stake are earning the fees. The stability depositors who contribute to the health of the ecosystem, they're earning the thing that can earn them the fees. It's a completely closed loop system. There's full redeemability back for $1 worth of the underlying collateral. The market participants, all of us, we're all sharing in the system of a thing that remains stable without having to rely on a bank.
Man, I'm super excited for Pulse Chain. I want this stuff to come out already. I don't want to change the subject too much, but I'm sure you've been seeing all these updates with Pulse Chain testnet. Do you have any intuitions? Do you think it's worth sharing your intuitions as to a possible theoretical timeline with testnet, mainnet? Are we talking about a couple months? Do you think this could be a year from now? Is there any kind of reasonable way to think about this?
I don't know that anything we say is reasonable.
Yeah, we're
Because
all just guessing
we've
now,
seen
right?
how that goes in the past, and the closer the closer we get to like how close are we? Don't even know how close we are. Even when Richard's done syncing everything, and what happens next? Now he has a test net that maybe he still has to run the fixer bot. Maybe he still has to deploy his fresh smart contracts, his PulseX smart contracts, and maybe he still has to you know internally test the governance mechanism in there or whatever. We have no clue at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
All we know is that they're working on it, and what the
Right,
status of the sync is, but we don't really know what happens after that.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's again speculation that mainnet might be a month or two away. But again, it's all wild speculation. No one really knows.
Right.
Yeah. Oh well, it'll come eventually. Hopefully, it's a super exciting ecosystem. But perhaps just wrap up on the tokenomics point for the sake of just perhaps explaining to people. Would it be fair to say that the tokenomics of the earned token is pretty similar to that of liquid loans?
Yes, it would be fair to say that.
Okay, very interesting. Now, I brought this up before, and I want to try and bring this up in a way that's honest to what's going on and also brings across the point, which is if you compare different protocols building on Pulse Chain, liquid loans, they sacrifice people sacrifice roughly, I think it was what, $45 million worth of value, roughly. Power City has sacrificed, I think so far has raised around 3 to 4 million. There is an argument to be said that there is a degree of Power City being undervalued because we're bringing the team seems to be bringing similar functionality. Now I know we're sacrificing for political statements. That's all well and good,
Right. Yeah,
but
let's make that clear. There's
yeah,
nobody's buying anything.
no,
This isn't a valuation of a company or an entity or a protocol. These are just people's statements in support of their beliefs in a free market, right? Um, but it is interesting that the beliefs of okay, so our beliefs in Power City, we believe in the right to a free market, and we're providing some amazing tools towards that, right?
right.
Our
Similar
cross
tools that
chains,
are
our
raised much
cross
more.
chain swap dex aggregator,
Yeah,
huge deal, which has some really cool fees that flow to watt stakers. Okay, we have some automation built right on top of the liquid loans contracts. So you can do some really cool things. And there's some really cool potential there for people that are using that. Um, you know, we have Pixel Park. Pixel Park will take another several months for us to build and I actually think this will blow away everything else that we've ever done in terms of wow factor.
really.
Okay.
Okay.
It's literally our biggest build. And the thing that we're telling people about the least is our Pixel Park,
We
right?
haven't heard that much, man. Is there any kind of news updates,
I'm
front
not
ends
giving
you
any
can share?
updates about Pixel Park.
Okay.
The people that we're competing against are people like OpenSea and LooksRare. And what we have blows their stuff out of the water.
Is there
Okay.
a reason why you're not giving updates in terms of the NFT marketplace?
Yes, there is. So some of the functionality we have, what you can do inside of Pixel Park, is something the other players are not doing yet, right? So we're not even going to mention the just get it out of your mind. Just know that we're building this cool Pixel Park thing that's, several months out still. We're
Okay.
we're we're really deep into this build and it's going to be huge,
You don't want to
right?
give away the secret sauce. I got
Right.
you. Yeah.
But look, we have a great partnership with multi-chain. We have this Dex aggregator bridge. We've got an amplifier front end on top of liquidity forks. We've got our own liquidity fork, so people don't have to sell their PulseX. People can also utilize the core. They can mint some watt tokens and they can stake those at an ever increasing rate for the fees of all of our protocols. These are like really, really cool things that people can do. Now, the initial thought is, wow, they're doing a lot of things. Well, first off, you got to look at the size of our team, but you also have to realize like some of our stuff is done through a partnership, right? Where it's like we've done a lot of legwork to coordinate to bring people the Pulse chain and bring a tool for people to use and earn fees from. All right. So it's like, it's really not that, like, don't get confused. Break it into segments. We have the bridge and it's a DEX aggregator. Cool. That should be worth a significant amount of usage volume flowing through it to bring people to the chain. All right. Next, you have the amplifier, a liquid loans front end that you can use in its basic form, or you can do all sorts of auto compounding functions, automation inside of it as well. That front end can be used against any liquidity fork, to include back on ETH chain if we decide to go that way. But we've also decided to bring liquidity itself to the PulseX token, so you can do all the same things against PulseX. Those people should have the ability to collateralize and not have to sell, just like people who have Pulse who would like to collateralize and not have to sell and play the same game. It's not a competition. It's a different piece of collateral, but there are some cool plays you can do back and forth between the two. All right. Now, set that aside for a second. You have Pixel Park. That's a little ways out in the future. But now you have the core that you simply stake at an ever increasing share rate for the fees in all of our things. When you break it down like that, it's just a really cool ecosystem, and it's not that complicated. And we do have some other things in the works, such as Pixel Park. As time goes on, we will always continue building and bringing things. When we finish Pixel Park, for example, we'll move on to the next thing. When we finish that, we'll move on to the next thing.
Sure.
The Power City team is going nowhere. We do fully intend on being the biggest thing on the entire Pulse chain. We're not building one thing and then just sitting back. We're building many things that people can participate in, and everybody can earn fees from these things.
So
right? It's not a
yeah.
dog coin. It's not a meme thing. It's not a Ponzi-nomic thing. These are tools and services that people will be flowing all sorts of volume through. It might be a good idea to participate in those things.
The sacrifice is currently live, is it not?
There's a sacrifice phase, sacrificenow.io.
Right. And one of the things I liked about Power City is that, with all these different projects doing different sacrifice phases, with a lot of different projects, the penalty for being late was quite high. But Power City was unique in the sense where, the difference in kind of the point mechanism for your sacrifice was not so extreme if you came in day one or later on, where I think it was a 2-to-1 ratio, where now it's a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning it's not, you're
Right.
not getting so penalized in terms of
Right.
sacrifice points for being kind of late.
Right. But it's
not even late. Really.
It's not even late.
Yeah,
right?
it's not even out
It's
yet.
literally
Right,
just 1-for-1. It's
Yeah.
like, imagine being one of the few people that got in at a 2-for-1. Okay. How many people compared to, now? Well, those are people that, like, before all of these details were out, and before, like, we're not that far away from our public test net, and we've already released our videos of our things, and we're getting all sorts of content pushed out there. So those earliest of believers were, like, fewer, right? So when you think, oh, well, it's not, they got a 2-for-1, I didn't. It's like, it's really not big of a deal. Like, they just piled in at the beginning because they trust us, right? Now you also have to consider, though, that there are bonuses. Look, if you participate in another SAX, like internet money dividends, or PulseX, or Pulse itself, or liquid loans, or Magic Carpet Ride, you get bonuses. You can get up to 50% if you have participated in other sacrifices, because we appreciate what those teams are doing, and we do like these other protocols, you get bonuses for that, right? So you're not actually down at all. And as the community as a whole reaches various milestones, there's bonuses that come from that too. You literally can be selected for a giant bonus, in a drawing as community
Right.
milestones are reached.
I see. I was really hoping I'd get a bonus. I don't think I got one personally, but that's okay. Yeah, but no, as we can see here, again, like we mentioned, we're currently around somewhere around 3, 4. So there's
Yeah.
definitely,
So
yeah,
yeah, we may even be due for another one now. That number 15, maybe,
right.
right? Maybe
Okay.
that's the next one, right? So look, 80 random wallets will end up getting drawn for a 35% bonus.
That's not insignificant. Yeah.
That's huge. And maybe
Yeah.
those people did participate in other sacrifices, PulseX, liquid loans, Pulse Chain, internet money dividends, magic carpet ride. And then, so they're already up. They're already up maybe 50% on their initial sacrifice.
Yeah.
So look, it's can you imagine okay. So a sacrifice is for no expectations. We're just talking points at this
Yeah.
point. So let's move on to another subject. Can you imagine somebody who was looking at Ethereum or Uniswap or PancakeSwap or something like that early on, or AnySwap, which is now multi-chain, who we partnered with, any number of protocols early on. And let's say they're like, early on, they're like, oh, today, it's I'm not going to get the same rate that I got today that I could have got yesterday, so I'm just not going to participate. Can you imagine what that would have looked like at the very start of a protocol?
Yeah. It's like
Right.
saying, imagine not, but just, for example,
Imagine not buying Bitcoin at 2 cents because somebody else
because
got
you
it for
missed the
1 cent.
ICO price, right? Or Ethereum, you're not buying at $2 because someone got 50 cents at the
Right.
ICO price, right? It's
Right.
ridiculous.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
not the same concept, right? Because, but at the
It's
same time,
different.
it's
You're right.
like,
Yeah.
wouldn't you like to, you know, show your political beliefs early on? Right.
The
Right.
point is you're early, and there's been an
Yeah.
obvious benefit to being early in all of crypto. If you were early to Ethereum, if you were early to Bitcoin, if you were early to any of these projects that have longevity, there's massive, massive benefit to being early. And let me tell you, man, this is why I focus so heavily on the Pulse Chain ecosystem, on these different projects building on Pulse Chain, because the frank truth is that Cardano videos, Polygon videos, BNB videos, they get views because there's a massive audience there. But the problem with that is, you're participating in systems that have been around for a while and have already accrued a lot of value, which is great. There's some good things going on in different places all over the ecosystem. My point is that there's been an obvious benefit to being in early, historically speaking. And so that's where I think it makes sense to be paying attention. And there's so much opportunity for being early, not just in Pulse Chain, but different protocols building different things on
Mhm.
Pulse Chain. So
Yeah.
it's incredibly, incredibly important
Yeah.
to be paying attention now, because in a couple of years, historically speaking,
Yeah.
paying attention to early things has paid dividends in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. People will absolutely use these things, um, going forward. If you don't like, people will absolutely use this bridge. It's the most secure in its functionality, with the biggest uh, bridging service in existence, who actually does it in a really trustless fashion, right, through their networks. Um, Amazing. People will absolutely use this bridge to be able to swap from one token on one chain to another token on a different chain, without having to give your coins and your keys, everybody collectively, to one entity that can drain it. Like that's really, really cool, right?
Do we
So
know
people will
what chains you
absolutely
support yet?
do what?
Do we know what chains you support yet? Power City will be supporting
We
it.
may have a list,
Mhm.
and well, you could go to multi-chain. You can look at all the chains that they support.
Oh, okay. So whatever multi-chain
Right.
supports. Okay, I got you.
So then, um, like, it's literally going to bring a lot of users. We already know the user base of liquid loans, and our front end's really, really cool. It interacts directly with the contracts. It has some additional functionality. All the same underlying staking pools and everything remain the same, right? So they still everybody in liquid loans benefits. Doesn't matter what front end you use. However, our front end is really, really cool. Okay. So we feel a lot of people are going to use that. Um, we feel that there's a huge community of PulseX people that also don't want to sell their PulseX, or they want to have some additional plays that they can do to either position themselves into stable coins or earn some yield or whatever, so on and so forth. That's a big deal. And going forward into the Pixel Park deal, that is not just going to be a pulse chain only thing. I think that's going to be something that competes pretty easily with the big boys like OpenSea and Looks Rare, right? So if you would like to be involved in these things that I think are going to drive a lot of volume, come join our Telegram, Power City IO. Ask some questions. Stay tuned for some demonstrations. And stay tuned for a public testnet for you to play with these things. We got to see V3 first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be leaving links for all that in the description after this live stream. Jesse, we've been going on for over an hour here. I want to say I'm super thankful for your time and your willingness to help educate people. I don't want to keep you here forever, but I do want to ask you before we let you go here. One of the it seems like there's been some changes since the first time I spoke to you guys. When I first spoke to you guys, again, the idea of Power City was kind of like a core that kind of invests in different protocols, and those and the fees of those different protocols get redistributed back to the core. Super interesting idea. One of the things Power City is kind of first talking about was building out a metaverse, building out some nodes as a service.
Mm-hmm.
Has that changed? Is that no longer a priority for Power City? Is that still on the roadmap, or is that kind of no longer on the roadmap for Power City?
So nodes as a service, that's kind of no longer on the roadmap. Now,
Okay.
there's other things that the community can participate in with nodes that's not directly part of something we've launched, but it certainly helps the entire ecosystem as a whole, right? So, Teller, for example, will have nodes that anybody can run to feed price, to scrape API price feeds in and participate in a community consensus mechanism via reporting nodes to report accurate prices back into pulse chain protocols. Okay, that's something that directly helps ourself and any other lending protocol like liquid loans and maybe even an Aave fork. So there's kind of like I think as far as nodes, people can participate in their own nodes. We have kind of backed off of us being the provider of all those things and then allowing the community to participate in that. We'd rather build the tools and services for people to play with and participate in, like actual swapping and yield bearing things and bridging from one chain to another, or interacting and building a NFT marketplace environment. That's the thing that's how we're kind of focusing on Pulse Chain at the moment. Now the core is the same, right? You stake into the core and you earn the fees from all our things. That's never changed.
Right. And although
Oh, and
one
the
thing I
metaverse
want to,
thing, the
yeah,
metaverse thing.
stays, yeah,
No, that's not off the table. We feel there's a lot of changes, and we're looking at uh and we have one guy who that's all he's doing is kind of architecting the direction of what that'll look like. That's a very fast-paced moving environment now, especially with all the AI that's happening. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Metaverses are not
All
going to
right.
be the
All right.
same as you see them today
Yeah,
2 years from now.
it's a fast evolving ecosystem, to say the least.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, now there is one point I would want to kind of clarify on, um, which was there seemed to be some kind of uh, distinction between kind of the earn protocol and what every and these different other dApps within Power City. And what I mean by that is that it seems that with earn specifically, the fees generated with earn go back to the earn token holders, where with the other dApps, the fees
That's
go
correct.
back to the core and get distributed to
100%
wallet
correct.
stakers.
Right.
So there's a bit of a distinction there.
Correct. So it's actually like 2 tokens that actually do some earning inside of all of our different things. We only have one community though, right? So think what that might mean. Early people might want to get involved with 2 different things that they can play with.
Right. Right. So to put perhaps to attempt to clarify, even though there is some distinction here, um, it is ultimately the same community, and when sacrificing, you're sacrificing for the political cause that Power City is
Right.
supporting of that
But we
community.
only know of one community that, we only know of one community.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, this is exciting stuff, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to test nets. I'm looking forward to front ends. Do you guys have any plans so far to share front ends, share test nets, or are we just waiting on Pulse
Yep. So
Chain
we
testnet
we've
version
done
2?
that. We've done that. You
Yeah.
can see our videos of our amplifier, for example. Um, the liquidity fork, it's gonna, for PulseX, the earn protocol, it looks the same as the current front end that we have a video of. Right. It
Okay.
won't look. It's literally the same thing. It's got. You can take a loan here. You can stability provide here. You can stake here, and you can do all these functions. So really, a lot of that's not going to change. With one caveat to that, it might be beneficial for us to um, at some point provide an SDK for the community to build their own front ends on as well. Right. So if other
Could you
people want to
explain what
build
that
a
means
front
for
end,
those
yeah. So what
unaware
does
of
that
what
mean? So
SDKs? Yeah.
right. So let's say there's some devs out there who are like, oh, we kind of like that. Can we run a front end? Well, sure. Here's a tool you can use to actually easily generate your own front end on your website. So if you believe that that will bring users to your platform because you're offering, an earn protocol, um, you know, a tab there that allows you to interact with everything earn protocol. Cool. You could do that, right? And maybe we'll provide an SDK to make that very easy for people to do, or for people to integrate it with a wallet that they might be building, for example.
Interesting. Would that be, just for the sake of kind of conceptualizing this, similar to how like an API functions, where you get data from kind of the for example, if you're trying to get data from like Binance, you can connect an API, which essentially transfers the data from kind of the original platform onto another.
Well,
But since
well,
but
kind
instead
of.
of the
Let's
yeah,
explain it easier. There's like 5 different front ends for Hex, right? All
right,
made by different people.
yeah,
But you go there and you can do all the same things.
yeah,
You can buy, you can stake, you can end stake, you can EES, you can do all those things. Same thing.
I got you. Okay, right on. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that we should?
I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, I think we did. I think there's some super, super interesting stuff going on here. Again, we have the kind of multi-chain DEX aggregator, super interesting. We have the
Mhm,
liquid loans liquidity fork for PulseX, incredibly
mhm.
interesting. Again, guys, if you want to sacrifice for the political cause that Power City is supporting, become a member of the community. The sacrifice phase is currently still live. What is it? It's a sacrificenow.io. I'll leave links for everything in the description after this. And I just want to say, Jesse, thank you so much for coming on, man, and sharing your knowledge and sharing what's going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final words you want to share before we wrap up the stream?
Again, our Telegram, Power City IO, and same with our Twitter at Power City IO. Come ask questions. Look for us this weekend with KDP from our team as we. I think she's hosting a Twitter space where we're going to be answering a whole lot more questions.
Awesome stuff, folks. Everyone, like and follow and share. Help educate the people on what's going on. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everyone.